Hello, viewers, it's Josie. Welcome back to Eclectic Movie Reviews. And there's 11 days until Halloween. And so, with that in mind, I would like to give some spooky season picks of the month. 10, 10 recommendations. Although there's a possibility that in this I may divide this into two videos because there's a lot written on the page and I may get too tired reading all of it, so I may stop at 5 and then continue the rest maybe later today or in a few days from now. But let's get right to it. This is all going to be alphabetical, just so you know, so it's not ranked in order of preference or anything. Okay, first pick is silent film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari from 1920, directed by Robert Wiene. I could be pronouncing his name wrong. Forgive me. This is a German expressionist horror mystery. Two friends named Francis and Alan visit a carnival where they approach the eccentric Dr. Caligari. Under his wing is a hypnotized somnambulist named Cesar. According to Caligari, Cesar can foretell what is to come. Cesar makes the prophecy that Alan will die, which unfortunately comes to pass. Francis keeps a close watch on Cesar, and the mystery chase ensues. I'm not going to reveal any more of the plot because the film has an unreliable narrative and there's a really surprising twist that I don't want to give away. If you haven't seen it yet, film scholars have argued that the story is allegorical of German authority at the time with the rise of Hitler in power. It's an essential one. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is currently available to watch on YouTube, Tubi, and Canopy. Next up is Cronos from 1993, the directorial debut of Guillermo del Toro. Perfect timing to mention this one because his new iteration of Pinocchio premiered at the London Film Festival to great reviews, and I'm really excited to see it when it comes to Netflix. So, the story is, Jesus is an antique dealer. He lives with his wife and orphan granddaughter. One day he finds a 400-year-old amulet-like scarab that they call Cronos. One day, and then when this scarab hooks onto Jesus, the device gifts him with eternal life and vitality. Essentially, the more Jesus uses this device, the more younger he becomes. However, he must pay the price of a vampiric thirst for blood. He doesn't turn into a traditional vampire, though. He doesn't grow fangs or wings, like you see in some older movies. Nevertheless, it's a rather destructive path. There's one scene where he licks the blood off the floor. It's a little gross, but also kind of funny. It's like imagining someone licking ketchup off a restaurant floor. The funniest thing about it is that it's only a little bit of blood. It's not a whole puddle. Then meanwhile, a man named Angel Del Toro's, played by Del Toro favorite Ron Perlman, is sent by his dying uncle to retrieve the Cronos. Consequently, his wife and granddaughter are put in danger. This film has some interesting things to say about coming to terms with inevitable aging and death. But at its core, Cronos is about familial love. The bond between Jesus and his granddaughter is just so sweet. You can also see some similarities, like on a technical storytelling level, to Pan's Labyrinth in Cronos, of course, because it's Del Toro. Cronos is available to watch on HBO Max and is available on Criterion DVD and Blu-ray. And if you watch it on HBO Max, Del Toro gives a really cool intro. And he mentions how he had a close relationship with his abuela, grandmother, and he actually dedicated the movie to her. And then, this is a bit sadder news, Pinocchio premiered right after his mother's death. So thoughts and prayers to Guillermo del Toro, and also congratulations to the acclaim of Pinocchio. Moving forward to another movie relating to immortality, Death Becomes Her from 1992, directed by Robert Zemeckis. With a screenplay by Martin Donovan and David Koepp. So Meryl Streep. This is the Blu-ray I rented. My mom and I actually watched it last night. It's great to watch it again. So Meryl Streep is an actress of the stage and screen named Madeline Ashton, and she's so incredibly vain. And she's aging, and Goldie Hawn is a novelist named Helen Sharp. The two have sort of a envy-fueled love-hate relationship dating back to high school. And then one day Madeline has a brand new musical. Helen brings her husband, Ernest Melville, he's a doctor, played by Bruce Willis. And Helen wants to see if Ernest, Bruce Willis's character, will pass the Madeline Ashton test because she's had a history of stealing her boyfriends. And then, and just as Helen assumed, Ernest leaves Helen for Madeline. And then she goes crazy and is sent to a mental institution. She's gained a whole ton of weight. She's like crazy cat lady. And she's intending to get some form of revenge on Madeline. And then, cut to 14 years later, Madeline and Ernest's marriage has inevitably crumbled. Ernest has left his medical practice and become an alcoholic mortician. Helen has written a new book and she looks more beautiful and younger than ever. Madeline goes to her book signing, or whatever it is, and it turns out that she took this potion that is supposed to give her eternal life and make her look young and beautiful forever. At least they take care of themselves. The source of this potion is in the hands of a woman named Lyle von Rumen. If that's her name, as I remember, played by the beautiful and talented Isabella Rossellini. Then, Madeline takes the potion, and then she's gifted with beauty, the youthful beauty and looks that Goldie Hawn's character gets. And the two battle for Bruce Willis's affections once again. I won't reveal anything more plot-wise because you really gotta see it for yourself. It cleverly satirizes the cosmetics industry and Hollywood's narcissistic obsession with beauty. The makeup and visual effects work here are extremely impressive for the time period, and I believe it was nominated for Best Visual Effects at the Oscars. Let's see, Death Becomes Her. Yeah, I think it won. Yeah, it won Best Visual Effects in the 1992 1993 season. Uh, Death Becomes Her is currently streaming on Paramount Plus. If you have Showtime, I rented it on Blu-ray. I showed you the Blu-ray right here at the. It's really great Scream Factory Blu-ray. Next up is Near Dark from 1987, directed by Kathryn Bigelow. Caleb, played by Adrian Pasdar from Heroes and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., helps out his father and younger sister on their farm. Then he meets a vampire girl named May, who played Cushy in The World According to Garp, at a bar, and there are immediate romantic sparks between them. May bites Caleb and he becomes a vampire. What I like about it is how it's not an immediate full-on transformation, but rather gradual. The following morning, the sun burns some of his skin, and then Caleb tags along with May and the other vampires in an RV. These vampires are sort of mischievous, drifting vagabonds that drive in cars that they've stolen. The leader of the vampire group, Jesse Hooker, played by Lance Henriksen from Aliens, is initially hesitant to allow Caleb into the clan. Even so, Hooker decides to give Caleb a week's chance to see if he's ready to adhere to the vampiric lifestyle. The nastiest and most ruthless of the vampires is Severn, played by Bill Paxton, Kathryn Bigelow was with James Cameron at the time, and Bill Paxton often worked with James Cameron. And so, in fact, Severn wants to get rid of Caleb. And then Caleb's cravings for the blood of others makes him very ill. May lets Caleb drink some of her blood, but she can't let him have too much, or else she could become weak and die. Despite being part of the vampire gang, May doesn't enjoy killing for as much as Severn does. Ultimately, Caleb becomes conflicted as far as whether he should stay with his family and help out with the farm or continue life with the vampire gang, which really isn't so glamorous. Sure, one could live forever. However, it comes at the cost of following a cycle of stealing and murdering and being pretty isolated from regular society. Back to Death Becomes Her. What's interesting is how Isabella Rossellini's character warns them how after like 10 years they have to sort of disappear from the limelight. And yeah, the downside of living forever is getting bored and lonely. And like and then back to Kronos. On Tuesday night, I took part in a live stream discussion on it with Popcast Network, and AJ, one of the people on that channel, made an interesting point how a lot of films where characters chase immortality often show, like, depict immortality as something that it's not all cracked up to be. Back to Near Dark. Obviously, this film is well directed since it's Kathryn Bigelow and she's a master filmmaker. But the writing is also very smart in how it lays out the rules of these vampires. Somebody on Twitter stated that Luca Guadagnino's new film Bones and All, with Timothée Chalamet and Taylor Russell, is sort of like Near Dark for our generation, the way it establishes the rules of the cannibals. That's Bones and All is a cannibal love story road movie. And Similar to Sundown, A Vampire in Retreat, Near Dark combines the Western genre with vampires. It's not as rug and tug as, let's say, Sundown, or uh, or even John Carpenter's Vampires, but it has the showdown aspect of westerns towards the end. While watching it, I actually thought more about street gang movies such as Walter Hill's The Warriors and Streets of Fire uh, than the western genre. Like if The Warriors and Streets of Fire were set in a rural area, like that's very much the atmosphere of this movie, at least to me. Um, it's got a fun 80s score by Tangerine Dream. It sort of sounds like a combination of Goblin and Angelo Badalamenti. I could be mispronouncing his name. He did the score. He often collaborates with David Lynch. Angelo Badalamenti. He did the score for Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive. You know, the David Lynch's most of David Lynch's filmography. And unfortunately, Near Dark is very hard to find. I would see if your library has it, or request it from another library through Interloan, because I don't think it's available to stream for free anywhere. It was on Shudder at one point, but not anymore. Like this because this is a cult classic worth seeing for sure. It came out around the same time. It came out the same year as The Lost Boys, but eventually flopped at the box office, but gained a following over time with like HBO and home video. So yeah, that's Kathryn Bigelow's Near Dark. Next up is Nightbreed from 1990, directed by Clive Barker, who gave us Hellraiser and Lord of Illusions. Clive Barker is also a prolific horror fiction writer. Earlier this year, I read his books The Thief of Always and The Great and Secret Show, both excellent novels. He's written a lot of short stories, and in one of his short stories was the basis for the 1992 Candyman short story. The Forbidden, from, I think, his collection called Books of Blood, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, back to Nightbreed. And speaking of his books, it's based off of Clive Barker's own novel, Cabal. Aaron Boone, played by Craig Sheffer, frequently dreams of a place called Midian, a land underneath a cemetery occupied by kind monsters called the Nightbreed. Aaron sees a therapist named Philip Decker, played by David Cronenberg, who actually gives a decent performance, on behalf of his girlfriend Laurie's wishes. Unfortunately, Dr. Decker does not have the best of intentions. In fact, he's a serial killer who drugs him with lithium and deceptively persuades Boone that he's committing murders that he is in fact doing. Boone gets hit by a truck. When he's sent to the hospital, Boone meets a man named Narcisse who takes him to Midian, and becomes one of the Nightbreed. I forget how it's pronounced in the movie. I watched it over the summer. His girlfriend Laurie sets out to find him, and she encounters a Nightbreed woman and her daughter. She learns more about the rules of Midian and the Nightbreed. On the poster for the movie, it's funny. It says, Laurie thought she knew everything about her boyfriend. Nightbreed manages to be both a horror and action-adventure spectacle with really fascinating lore. The makeup is always creatively innovative in Clive Barker's films. Nightbreed is no exception. Let's see who did the makeup here. Nightbreed makeup artist. Oh, it had a lot of people behind it. I was gonna see if Rick Baker did the makeup. No, he didn't. He did do David Cronenberg's Videodrome though. As far he did the makeup for that. In addition to Oscar in makeup for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but that's a completely different discussion. Let's get back to Nightbreed. Also, the costumes and production design in Nightbreed are genuinely impressive. Danny Elfman's score sounds like it is also really good. It sounds like a mix of the scores for Nightmare Before Christmas and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. The score really fits the movie because it's a good mix of creepy and adventurous. Nightbreed is on Blu-ray through Scream Factory and available to watch on Peacock. Next up is Sleepy Hollow, from 1999, speaking of 1989 Batman, directed by Tim Burton. This is an adaptation of Washington Irving's story of the same. And what I love about Tim Burton's reimagining is how, while it keeps the horror elements of the source material, he also turns it into a psychological mystery thriller. In this version, rather than being a schoolmaster, Ichabod Crane, played by Johnny Depp so wonderfully, is a police constable assigned to investigate the beheadings done by the Headless Horseman, played by Christopher Walken. On the way, he discovers some hidden secrets of the town. I love the whole cast here. There's some great performances, not only by Johnny Depp as Ichabod and Christina Ricci as Katrina Von Tassel, but also from Michael Gambon, Jeffrey Jones, whom you may know as A.W. Merrick from Deadwood, Palpatine himself, Ian McDiarmid, that's how you pronounce his name, and Miranda Richardson, who is amazing in this. Danny Elfman's score, bring up Danny Elfman again, his score is great. There's brilliant cinematography by Emmanuel Lubezki, who would of course later go on to be the cinematographer on Children of Men, Tree of Life, Birdman, and The Revenant. And he has 3 Oscars for cinematography on Gravity, Birdman, and The Revenant. What I love about the Lubezki cinematography here is that while it is obviously dark given the theme, there's a good balance of low and high key lighting. And I guess one could argue that it highlights the clashing and contrast between religion, the occult, and scientific reasoning. That may be going a little bit too far, though. No, you can make that. You can make that statement. What I love most about the 1999 Sleepy Hollow is that it's actually quite a smart critique of problematic foundational socio-political power structures that are still happening today, sadly. It depicts issues such as the hunger for land, mistreatment and misunderstanding of women, and oligarchical religious fanaticism. Sleepy Hollow was available to watch on Paramount Plus at one point, but not anymore. You can rent it for a couple dollars on Amazon Prime, and it's available on DVD and Blu-ray. Next up is Stir of Echoes from 1999, directed by David Koepp, who actually co-wrote Death Becomes Her, that I brought up earlier, and he was the co-screenwriter. He was screenwriter on the first 2 Jurassic Park movies and Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man. So, A Stir of Echoes is based off of a novel by Richard Matheson, who wrote the books of I Am Legend, What Dreams May Come, and Somewhere in Time. The book title of Somewhere in Time was Bid Time Return. He also wrote quite a few Twilight Zone episodes. Now, Stir of Echoes came out the same year as The Sixth Sense, but was overshadowed by the latter. I think the Sixth Sense comparisons are unfair because while they both involve kids communicating with the dead, they're still two very different plots. So Kevin Bacon plays a working class family man named Tom Witzke. He had dreams of becoming a musician, but now works as an electrician. He is extremely skeptical about supernatural phenomena. One night his son has a weird vision. Then not long after, his pregnant wife Maggie, played by Catherine Erb, arranges for him to have a hypnosis meeting with her sister Lisa, played by Illeana Douglas. And then he starts having visions of a girl named Samantha who went missing 6 months ago. This brings Kevin Bacon into an obsessive spiral trying to figure out this mystery. His son has visions as well. Some of these images are actually pretty frightening and had me quite startled. The cuts to such visions are so quick in a way that catch you off guard. Stir of Echoes isn't just focused on the spectacle of horror violence. Yes, there's reacting to visions of the dead, and it's a murder mystery. But beyond that, the film is similar to Sleepy Hollow, sort of a social commentary, particularly addressing fears of change and going against the status quo. Overall, it's a super engaging, underrated, suspenseful, psychological mystery thriller. Kevin Bacon gives a genuinely great performance in this. Of course he's made fun of a lot, being like Pretty Boy and stuff, but Kevin Bacon actually is a really good actor. This and River Wild are two of my favorite performances of his. I also really like, I also want to watch, there's a show on Showtime that's supposed to be really good called City on a Hill. Now, Kevin Dunn, from a character actor from Transformers and Small Soldiers, is also good in this. That's all I have to say about that one. Stir of Echoes is available to watch on Peacock. It's also on DVD and Blu-ray. Next up is Vampire from 1932, directed by Carl Theodor Dreyer. This was inspired by Carmilla, a part of J. Sheridan Le Fanu's short story collection, In a Glass Darkly. Vampire was Dreyer's first sound film. What's interesting is how it was recorded in 3 different languages. It still feels like a silent film because there's minimal dialogue and title cards are still used. It's a silent talkie hybrid taking several elements of German expressionism. In the story, a drifter named Alan is led to a manor. Alan's very much intrigued by the occult and the supernatural. He meets the 2 daughters of the currently deceased lord, Giselle and Leon. Leon gets sick, and it turns out that she was bitten by a vampire. Mystery follows. It's experimentally dreamlike and atmospheric. The free-flowing narrative follows a kind of dream logic, nightmare logic, rather. In other words, events unfold in a way that they would in a dream or nightmare. This is due to the film's disoriented narrative structure and supernaturally surreal imagery. According to Catherine X. Cox in her article for Census of Cinema, eerie visuals in black and white are created through camera angles that convey a claustrophobic feeling, with low ceilings, narrow hallways, rooms of uneven yet universally crowded dimensions, complemented by harsh lighting, shadows, and darkness. There's one sequence with dancing shadows that was so cool and inventive. The lines between the real and the imaginary are blurred. To that point, the lines between what the film suggests is dead or alive is also blurred. Being released around the same time as Todd Browning's Dracula, Vampire was initially not well received by critics or audiences, but is now renowned as an essential, influential staple of not only horror cinema, but cinema in general. Its influence is particularly noted in David Lynch's Eraserhead from 1978. You can stream Vampire on HBO Max, and it is on DVD and Blu-ray. It's part of Criterion Collection. And Eureka, I believe, put out a Blu-ray. Next up is another Robert Zemeckis film, What Lies Beneath. This is a supernatural psychological thriller mystery. Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford play a relatively recently married couple named Claire and Norman Spencer. Her first husband died. She married Harrison Ford's character. Ford plays a renowned scientist addicted to his work. After Claire's daughter goes away to college, she and Norman move into this big, spooky house. Claire becomes suspicious of their neighbor. I don't want to give any more of the plot. Also, don't watch the trailer online because it gives away the mystery. Zemeckis plays tribute to Hitchcock here. The cinematography by Don Burgess has an ethereal quality. There's sort of like a foggy overtone. The shots are surprisingly very bright, and there's quite a bit of white in the color palette. I think this stylistic choice actually makes the film more eerie than it would have if it were just all that was dimly lit, because the pale glows are ghostly. Oftentimes when filmmakers try to create tension, there are a lot of flashing cuts. That's fine. In fact, there are filmmakers who take that approach really well. However, the way Zemeckis builds suspenseful tension in What Lies Beneath is different because there are more spaces between the cuts. He knows when to cut here. This is how the film maintains its spookiness. On top of that, Alan Silvestri's score is another ingredient to this anxiety-inducing thrill ride. Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer give some of their best acting here. This is a psychological thriller that more people should see. What Lies Beneath is currently streaming on HBO Max and Paramount+. And finally, we're talking about Wolf, directed from 1994, directed by Mike Nichols. I'm excited to watch this again. This is a rental. Will Randall, played by Jack Nicholson, is the book editor. One night, while driving home, he's bit by a wolf. The publishing company he works for is overtaken by a businessman named Raymond Allen, played by Christopher Plummer. Consequently, Will gets fired, and a hostile man named Stuart Swinton, played by James Spader, takes his position. Jack Nicholson discovers that James Spader's character is having an affair with his wife, so he bites him. And this is the event that really incites his werewolf transformation. The wolf makeup here is pretty hilarious, but at the same time, super remarkable, because while the makeup fulfills the purpose it's supposed to, with transforming Jack Nicholson and James Spader's characters into non-human creatures, it surprisingly doesn't deviate too much from their actual facial features. It blends really well with them, in fact. Jack Nicholson then meets and falls in love with Raymond Allen's daughter, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. The cast is on their A game here. Michelle Pfeiffer's in this one too. It's got a chilling, yet emotionally resonant score by the late, great Ennio Morricone. I actually really like the cinematography here by Giuseppe Rotuno, who actually died last year at the age of 97. He shot All That Jazz, Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which is getting a Criterion release in January, The Leopard, and Fellini's Casanova. It's dark, of course, but the dark blues and even the blacks and grays really stand out. It's a good movie to recommend for people who aren't super into horror, because it's also a psychological thriller in a way that Stir of Echoes, Sleepy Hollow, and What Lies Beneath are. It's not available to stream for free, but it is on DVD and Blu-ray. And that will do it for my longest video yet. Spooky season recommendations of the month. It was a pleasure sharing this with you. I put a lot of work into this. Thank you for watching. The links to my socials are in the description below. Happy Halloween. Goodbye for now.